RADIOACTIVE.com with your daily news update. Okay, here we are on August the 23rd in the year of our Lord 2025. And as usual, I got a lot of great information for you tonight. So let's just go ahead and click over here, Murtech on Rumble. And this is the video you're watching right now, episode 1662. Let's click on that. And this is all right, let's pause that, close the live chat. Let's slide down here and click the show more button to expand the description box. We have information from Awaken with JP, Devory Darkins, Steve Gruber, and Wendy. Okay, but before we get into that, I do need to give a shout out to Timothy405, just started following my channel. Becky Boo 2341 just started following my channel. Jarrell33 just started following my channel. And Conrad Logan 1010 just started following my channel. So thank you very much, folks, for following my channel. I greatly appreciate it, and I hope you're tuned in and enjoy the content. Okay, Ms. Flintstone 17 reposted my daily news update. Timothy405 commented on my daily news update from last night. Big John Perez and Debbie BS and Viper Sr. commented on my episode 1661. And Debbie BS commented on my extra 441B. So I'm going to go ahead and give this a thumbs up here. Boom. That's how easy it is. And I've got one of those thumbs up icons right down here. Right, here's the video you're watching. If you slide down here, scroll down here, and click this thumbs up button, that would be marvelous. Okay, let's get into this. Awaken with JP, his We Lie to You news segment. Okay, of course, this is satire and sarcasm. We don't want peace. News update. Okay, let's see what that's all about.
And the one idea is how we are going to exterminate white people.
Well, down under, they seem to have some good ideas on how to do that. Australians in their 30s and 40s are seeing an unprecedented rise in cancer. A 500% increase in prostate cancer, a 200% increase in pancreatic cancer, 150% increase in liver cancer, and 138% increase in uterine cancer, and 85% increase in kidney cancer. And while we can't explain why there is a sudden alarming increase in cancer rates amongst the country with a 94% vaccination rate, we can see that it's good that some white people are getting exterminated. Good evening and welcome to We Lie to You News. Tonight we'll bring you inspiring stories like Putin and Trump meeting in Alaska, an illegal immigrant striving for the American dream and killing a family of 3 in the process, mail-in voting becoming a thing of the past, which is just crazy, and more. But starting with, if you like watching beautiful cheerleaders at football games, then you'll love the Minnesota Vikings' newest cheerleader swishing his junk around, so you have to see it. The alleged male cheerleader is inspiring young boys everywhere to believe that they too can grow up and act like a girl. And young girls are being inspired to believe they can grow up and have a man take their spot. And if you don't read the comments, you'll see the entire internet is in support of the cheerleader and basically just wants more of it. Especially NFL fans. This trend-setting cheerleader in Minnesota looks like he's poised to make a run for governor, yet insiders suggest that for him to have a shot at winning, he'll need to first get even gayer. And in pro-immigration news, an illegal alien, as they say, from India, was able to obtain a commercial driver's license in Gavin Newsom's beautiful California. Nothing wrong with that. And then he went to Florida, and while driving a semi-truck, attempted to make a U-turn from the outside lane of a busy highway, which resulted in him killing a family of 3. And nothing wrong with that. Yet Republicans are criticizing this illegal immigrant and his driving, saying hateful things like, he was here illegally and his driving killed 3 people. But the truth of the matter is, the country he's from might welcome people to drive like lawless maniacs, but that's just a cultural difference that should be welcomed here in America with open arms. and seatbelts on and airbags deployed. The killer of three, who was just chasing down the American dream and had to make a U-turn to do it, faces felony charges. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announced that after facing his charges, he'll be deported. Meanwhile, Democrats obviously want this man to stay in America, where he can make more valuable contributions to society. Perhaps he could even drive delivery trucks for the Democrats. But one thing he won't be able to drive truckloads of for the Democrats anymore is mail-in ballots. Why? Because President Trump announced he'll be signing an executive order to put an end to mail-in ballots. Now, Trump erroneously claims that mail-in ballots can lead to what's called voter fraud. Well, that is a fraudulent statement. May we remind you that from 2020 to 2024, the internet heavily censored anyone who discussed voter fraud. That's how secure our elections are, and mail-in ballots are an important part of such security. In other news, in Michigan, 3 out of these 6 city council members are being investigated for election rigging. And in world news, President Trump met with President Putin in Alaska for peace talks on the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Hashtag, I stand with Ukraine still. During these talks, neither president mentioned how the U.S. suckered Russia into giving us Alaska in 1867 for just $7 million. Currently, Alaska makes $7 billion a year on their oil alone. But Putin did mention that if Trump was in office, the Russia-Ukraine war would never have started. Take a look.
Today, when President Trump saying that if he was the president back then, there will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that.
Putin talks like an old American lady. Thought he'd sound different. On his arrival, President Trump had a B-2 bomber fly directly over Putin's head, which is honestly pretty cool. When people come over to my house, I usually show them this knife, which lets them know, if you get out of line, here's this. Same kind of thing. After the world leaders met, it was time for the pretend world leaders to meet. A Trump representative hosted a meeting with Zelensky in D.C., who wore a nice t-shirt to the meeting. Given he was just meeting with a Trump rep, Zelensky decided to dress down a bit from his typical stately sweatshirt attire. But Zelensky did then have a chance to meet with Trump directly. The result? He wore a suit. Smart move for an insanely little man. And here's a Palestine activist defacing a war memorial in France while wearing a dress. Here's how his mind works. You might not have been down for my cause, but after watching me commit vandalism in a dress, you probably are now. And as President Trump has taken the steering wheel on lowering crime in D.C., LA Mayor Karen Bass probably thought she was speaking out against racism when she had this hot take. Trump's crackdown on crime in Washington, D.C. mainly impacts black and brown youth. She obviously didn't mean it like that. Kind of a stupid thing to say. Oh, she was right. I guess she did mean to say it. That's it for tonight's news. And if you've been wondering, is humanity getting any smarter? Well, the results are in. And it's not. Good night.
Here's a fact for
All right, I'm going to pause it there. He's going into a commercial now. Let me show you that this video does come from Awaken with JP, and I like the way he's dressed. I mean, he looks just like a mainstream media reporter. Okay, it does come from Awaken with JP. I am following his channel, and I've given him a thumbs up, so I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump over here and spend some time with one of our sponsors and see what they have to say.
All right, anglers, if you're ready to fish remote lakes or quiet rivers in total stealth mode, check out the Nevada Fishing Float Tube from Caddis Sports.
This U-shaped beast is built for serious fishing missions, ultra-stable, super maneuverable, and tough as nails thanks to heavy-duty ripstop material and double-stitched seams.
You get a padded backrest, oversized seat, 2 large gear pockets, rod holder, stripping apron, and even a dry fly patch. Everything you need to stay locked in and ready when the bite is on.
Fluorescent accents keep you visible out on the water, and carry handles make it easy to haul in and out.
Whether you're chasing bass in the shallows or hiking into alpine trout lakes, the Nevada Float Tube is built for the job.
Use code RUMBLE at checkout for for 10% off your order today.
That's catasports.com. Get out there, stay light, and catch the big one.
The New York Appeals Court is now throwing out the nearly $500 million judgment against President Trump in the civil fraud case brought by the state's attorney general. I want to go live now to our correspondent, Kara Scannell in New York. So, Kara, update our viewers. What are you learning about this breaking news?
Wolf, this is a huge win for President Donald Trump. A New York appeals court 5-member panels have agreed to throw out the nearly $500 million judgment against the president. This was from the case brought by New York Attorney General Letitia James. Now, this is a 323-page opinion. The judges remarkably could not reach unanimity on any one opinion. And they note that there were profound disagreements in how they were analyzing this, but enough of them, they had agreed to this so that the case could move forward to the next stage where they expect it will be appealed further. But this decision does say that the judgment, the nearly $500 million, is thrown out. You'll remember that Trump had posted a $175 million bond that will be given back to him at some point. But that was a real significant judgment against the president. At the time, he was facing the criminal charges. It was unclear if he would be able to raise the money, but now that is no longer a concern. That judgment is against him, has been thrown out.
Okay, so no question, this is a huge win for the president and a major loss for Democrats who truly tried to use this case in order to hurt the president politically, but it has backfired ever since they decided to go down this road. Now, the president did react to it by saying it's a total victory in the fake New York State Attorney General Letitia James case. He also went on to say that they made me bond this outrageous sum, which never happened before, and which cost me millions of dollars a month. It should never have been allowed to happen, and everyone knew it. Importantly, the vote was 5-0. Sadly, there are other cases against me that are equally disgraceful, including those headed up by corrupt judges like Juan Merchant, whose daughter collected millions of dollars in fees from crooked Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, while her father shockingly refused to recuse himself from a vicious and corrupt trial, which is also under appeal, one in which every legal pundit in New York said there was no case. Now, obviously, MSDNC and the way they're reacting to this is to be expected. Take a look.
Eric Trump calling this a total victory, but is it?
No, it's anything but. And you can predict what the spin is going to be, total exoneration, et cetera. I have had a chance to skim this opinion, certainly not read every word of the 300-page opinion. But what's really important is, even though the court found that the fine was excessive and has eliminated that under the Eighth Amendment, what it said, most importantly, is that there was fraud, that the verdict was absolutely sound, that the evidence showed that the Trump organization engaged in massive fraud, and that is not going anywhere, that finding. In addition, the court is upholding all of the injunctive relief, that is requiring an independent monitor to make sure that this pattern of massive fraud stops, to protect the public, barring some of the Trump organization officials from serving in corporate leadership roles. All of that stands. And so certainly it is a benefit to the Trump organization not have to pay $500 million in a fine. What's important here is that the court upheld the finding that the Trump organization engaged in massive fraud.
Now, Letitia James did respond to that. I'm going to get to it here shortly. But I first want to give you guys an opportunity. If you've been getting value from our channel in this video, please like, share, and subscribe. We do have affirming President Trump, his company, and 2 of his children are liable for fraud. She pretty much at the bottom says, we will seek appeal to the Court of Appeals and continue to protect the rights and interests of New Yorkers. And as I continue to say and repeat myself constantly, the identity of Democrats and these individuals who made their career on going after President Trump, this is all they know. They have no other moves but to continue to go after him, because That's who they are at this point. And that's just unfortunate. So you can't say you're about protecting, in the case of Letitia James, New Yorkers, but at the same time, you're obsessed with prosecuting President Trump. Those two things just don't go together at this point.
We're just getting some new reaction in from the White House right now. If we can pull this up, this is from Trump spokesman Stephen Chung saying, quote, Letitia James' political crusade against President Trump, which is barred by the statute of limitations, and where she ludicrously valued Mar-a-Lago and Palm Beach, Florida, as worth a paltry $18 million, as well as committed a ton of other fatal errors, is just another failed skirmish in the discredited lawfare campaign against President Trump, his family, and his business that other Democrat prosecutors are dropping left and right.
Yeah, and what they're doing is gaslighting in the way that they're responding to this ruling. As an example, the appeals court did not speak about the merits of the case. They only spoke about the penalty amount and how improper it was and how it violated the Eighth Amendment. But of course, the attorney general tries to celebrate this, and we all know there is no celebration on her side of things.
I think all of this was actually the undoing of the Democrat Party in the 2024 election cycle. Because if you go back to 2020, Joe Biden launched his campaign on like decency, on the soul of America, about democracy, that President Trump was a threat to democracy. And then I think people saw all these cases against him, particularly this, when you have Jonathan Turley at the time saying that, look, the real estate market, people typically do this. They overvalue, they undervalue assets. There were no victims in this case. So I think you had reasonable-minded people being like, I don't know, this seems pretty unfair against President Trump. This kind of seems like a witch hunt against him. And then you had the assassination attempt. And then I think the wool kind of came, released from people's eyes because they realized that, no, like the Democrats are the threat to democracy. Like they're the ones who are weaponizing the system against him. So it totally undermined their entire point, like the only point they had heading into the 2024 election cycle. So, and then now the irony of it is obviously we had a judge that was biased because he had previously donated to Democrats. And then you had Letitia James, who is now finding herself in hot water, potentially with mortgage fraud. So, it's the joke's on them because this is just going to continue President Trump's, rise.
All right, so allow me to share a quick message from today's sponsor, Bearskin. Yes, it is summertime right outside. It's or delivery, and my name 3 times once. Now we go to our next story, and this is a continuation of the DC crime crackdown, where the president did authorize federal authorities, including the National Guard troops, and assist the local PD in getting crime under control. And they've actually been successful so far. We're going to show you the results here shortly. But first, let's hear from the president himself, because he actually showed up there locally in person to thank law enforcement and the National Guard troops. Take a listen.
Well, I just want to thank everybody very much for being here. I wanted to do this. We've had some incredible results. The results have come out, and it's like a different place. It's like a different city. It's the capital. It's going to be the best in the world. We're going to do what you're doing with law enforcement. And very importantly, also, we're going to physically do it. We're going back to Congress for some money, and we're going to redo a lot of the pavement, a lot of the medians, a lot of the graffiti's all coming off real fast. It's going to come down real fast. We're working with Clark Construction. They're one of the big ones. They're the biggest here by far, actually. And we're going to be not so much building, it's cleaning and fixing and redoing and putting brand new surfaces down on your roads and streets. And when people come in from the airport all the way to the Capitol or the White House or any place else they go, and they're going to say, boy, this place is spotless.
Oh, what a horrible thing he's doing. Can you imagine that? He's trying to clean Washington, D.C. up. Oh, what a horrible guy.
Now, I'm under the assumption that you guys have a friend or a family member or someone you work with that has been eating up the talking points from people on the left. And one of the main ones in response to what Trump is doing here is that he is deploying the military in order to control black and brown people because he ultimately wants to deport them. I mean, that's really what they believe. Now, we know that's not true, but that is the way that they see things. And unfortunately, the numbers, the results, and the people who live in D.C. continue to contradict that statement. Take a look.
When the National Guard hit the ground in Washington last week, that city's crime fight went into overdrive. And now we're seeing the impact and the dramatic reductions in crime. When the National Guard rolled into Washington last week, the locals seemed skeptical.
The crime is minimal here. There's not really a lot of crime here. It looks like window dressing to me.
But with the Guard on the ground, crime is on the decline. For the first time in a long time, D.C. has gone 7 days without a homicide. And that's not all. Carjackings are down 83%. Robberies are down 46%. Car thefts down 21%. And overall violent crime is down 22%.
When you have these kind of numbers going down, it basically says this is a success, and that means people feel safer.
Like many big cities, Washington's police department is critically short-staffed.
People who don't feel safe aren't free.
Sergeant Betsy Smith with the National Police Association says it is ripe for federal help.
More police generally equals less crime.
Let's say in your situation, if you were in charge of a police department of a larger city in our country, you would love to have these type of numbers, okay? These are the type of numbers that get people elected. And what I find to be so interesting is how much they're still willing to push back on this. This is about actually helping American citizens. Is the president politicizing this? Of course he is. It's all politics. But politics is fine as long as you get the results. And he's getting the results. And that's just something they can't argue against.
Your pal Gavin Newsom calls this an abuse of power, that this is just a power grab, and this is all stunt for show, and that you all are going to roll through other cities. You've heard things about, martial law is going to be declared. Yep. And to that, you say?
Well, first of all, how is it a power grab or how is it a stunt when we've already declined murders by 35% in 9 days? How many people are living and breathing today because Donald Trump had the willpower to say, you know what, we're sick of D.C. being a home to lawlessness. We're going to bring some public order back to the nation's capital. So what I would say to Gavin Newsom or to anybody else in some of these big blue states or big blue cities is you can have law and order, you can have common decency, you can have public spaces that young families can go to again.
Yeah, the vice president is making a phenomenal point about the fundamental difference in the thinking. For Democrats, it's an or scenario, and for conservatives, it's an and scenario. So what I mean by that is people on the right often buy into the thought process that two things could be true at the same time. For Democrats, they don't believe two things could be true at the same time. It's or. Either this is true or it's not. And that's why they're so radical. Now, speaking of that, we go to our next update. Texas House Republicans have moved forward on passing the new congressional maps for the state. As you guys know, Kathy Hochul and Gavin Newsom have already responded on social media, threatening to respond to this. And what we're going to start first with this update is the video that was released by Gavin Newsom today, where he actually threatened MAGA supporters and Republicans. Take a look.
This is radical rigging of a midterm election, radical rigging of an election, destroying, vandalizing this democracy, the rule of law. So I'm sorry. I know some people's sensibilities. I respect and appreciate that. But right now, with all due respect, we're walking down a damn different path. We're fighting fire with fire, and we're going to punch these in the mouth.
Okay. Now, I was just telling you that we think two things are true at the same time. I believe it's true that Gavin Newsom is not going to punch anybody in the mouth because that's not who he is. And it's also true that he believes speaking this way is somehow going to gain him political points. And I don't even think he cares about whether or not he's going to be able to get votes. I think he just cares about being the guy who will be ultimately nominated on the Democrat side to run for president. Now, here's the vice president again responding to this type of behavior you just saw from Gavin Newsom.
I mean, look, the autopsy for the Democrats, some free political advice from the president of the United States is stop sounding like crazy people. That really is all it is. I mean, this idea that Gavin Newsom is somehow going to mimic Donald Trump's style, I think that ignores the fundamental genius of President Trump's political success, which is that he's authentic. He just is who he is. You've got to be yourself. You've got to talk to people honestly about the issues. I don't think it's that complicated. Don't be a crazy person. Be authentic. If the Democrats did that, they'd do a hell of a lot better. But the thing is, the Democrats really can't help themselves. If you look at the transgender issue, they're still talking about letting, men playing women's sports. If you look at the crime issue, they're calling Donald Trump a fascist for taking action that in 9 days has dropped armed robberies by 55%. So part of sounding less crazy is being less crazy. And if the Democrats were less crazy, I think we'd all get along a whole lot better.
Okay, so that statement from the vice president reminds me of what happened last night over dinner with family, where they asked me point blank, Devory, is there anything you can agree on when it comes to Democrats? Anything at all that they're doing that you agree with? And I paused, took some time, and ultimately I arrived at the conclusion that the answer is no. Not because I want it to be no, but it's the reality of where the party is today. They could care less about actually implementing policies to help people like you and me. They're more focused on being against President Trump on everything, even if he does something that actually helps the American citizen, like cracking down on crime in DC, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, overtime. They have to disagree. And that's the unfortunate part about it. And it took me to a point where I had to tell my family, I said, hey, listen, I'm more likely to disagree with the president or his administration on something than I am when it comes to agreeing with Democrats and their policies.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and pause it there. And, he's absolutely right. I feel the same way. There are some things that, I've disagreed. I don't like the way that sometimes he addresses other people. Now, once again, I've said this before and I'll say it again. He doesn't attack people unless they attack him first. And then he goes full bore. He could probably tone down on that, but his policies, they can't be beat. I mean, we're going nowhere but up. I heard there was a big jump in the stock market today. Just another result of the Donald Trump, the MAGA platform. All right, this does come from Devory Darkins. I am subscribed to his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and see what we have next with Steve Gruber. Jeff Wiggins, Michigan's citizen-only voting campaign. This sounds great. I wish they would adopt this across the nation. Let's see what it's all about.
Well, my next guest I've known for a number of years because he's been in the mix, if you will, in orbit there around Lansing, the state capital, involved with different organizations and efforts. And now he's trying to put together an initiative to get on the ballot that it'll be citizens only voting in Michigan. Kind of an important thing, don't you think? If you're not a citizen, you shouldn't even have to put this in the law, but if you don't, well, you know what happens. Jeff Wiggins is with me. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Steve. Really appreciate it.
All right, so a ballot initiative, citizen-only voting. Big campaign launching here in Michigan. You're gathering signatures now, I assume, is where we are in the process. Tell us what's going on.
Yeah, so basically, you've seen it play out across the country, Steve, for the past few years. This argument over photo ID when you go in to vote or who can vote in our elections. And it's pretty common sense. We think only citizens should be voting in Michigan elections. We think that you should have to show a photo ID when you go in to vote. And we think that the Secretary of State has a responsibility to clean those voter rolls frequently to make sure that non-citizens aren't voting in our elections.
Yeah, I think that would be an 80-20 issue to say the least. Here, what comes to mind is all of the games they play in California when you say that. And here's why. I believe you're going to be successful in getting this done. I believe that citizen-only voting would probably pass in California. They would just never put it on the ballot for people to decide because here's my concern. In California, you have all of these games being played. No ID. Illegals are voting. They can count mass mail-in ballots for weeks after the election's over. The point that I'm making here is that disenfranchises voters in other states, including our own. Because if California is allowing illegal aliens to vote, it dilutes the vote of actual citizens in other states. I think there should be a federal law mandating that you can only vote in a federal election if you are an American citizen, period. But I don't know if you can get there because you have this problematic little document called the Constitution that says voting is up to the states, right? So you've got that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can have federal requirements, but they only pertain to federal elections. And that's kind of what this constitutional amendment will do in the state of Michigan. It says in any state and local election, you would have to show a photo ID to vote. You have to be a citizen to vote. And Steve, you hit on the point earlier. Having non-citizens vote in our elections disenfranchises actual voters, actual residents here, because we saw that last cycle. We saw a Chinese national down in Ann Arbor voting in our elections. And we wouldn't have found out about it unless he turned himself in. Right, yeah. Exactly.
And I will go back to what I've been saying since right after the election of 2020. A lot of people focus their sole attention on the voting machines. Okay, that's fine. That was never my attention. My attention was always on those stacks of mass mail-in ballots from which the origin, come on, you don't know where they've been or who filled them out, citizen, non-citizen, automatically coming off the Xerox machine. I just dated myself by saying Xerox machine. It's okay. The fact of the matter is you don't know where they're coming. You need election integrity. I think it does start with things like making sure the people that cast votes are citizens, but there's more to be done, isn't there?
Absolutely. And you said it, this is a very popular initiative. It is an 80-20 issue, if not more than that. We already have volunteers out in the field with petitions, and they can't hang on to them. We have to keep pushing out more and more. These are flying off the shelves. It's a volunteer effort right now, all hands on deck. And anybody we ask, this seems common sense. This already isn't a law. And the answer is no. In Michigan, you don't have to show your ID. You can sign an affidavit that says, I am who I say I am. And that's not election integrity, in my opinion, Steve.
Yeah, it's not. Let me ask you about this. All right, it takes money. And sadly, when things like this end up on the ballot, this and things like ranked choice voting, which may or may not make it to the ballot, I'm not sure it'll make it yet, but if it does, it'll be a bit problematic. It takes money. And what happens, in my experience, is those on the left show up with truckloads of money, and the people on the right show up with their wallet and say, well, here's what I got. Why do we always get outspent? How do we get the message out there? How do we make sure you win if it makes it to the ballot?
Well, the beauty of this is, Steve, it's like you said, it's an 80-20 issue. This gets on the ballot, it's going to pass. And the folks that are helping with this effort have done it in other states. They've been extremely successful there. And so there's a winning team put together with Americans for Citizens Voting here in Michigan. And we have the team to do it, and it's just got to get it across the finish line. And it's going to take everybody that believes in the cause to come on board.
All right, let's talk about the numbers here a little bit. How many signatures are you required to have?
So currently under the law, you need approximately 440,000 valid signatures to put it on the ballot. As you've seen in the past, you have to turn in significantly more than that just to cover your bases, to make sure you have a buffer there. So we're looking at somewhere between 600 and 650,000 signatures collected from voters across the state of Michigan that want to make sure our elections are secure and that we have voter integrity, that only citizens are voting, and that you show an ID when you vote.
And when did it get? And there's also a window of time to get it done. What's the window that we're in?
There's essentially a 180-day period where you have to collect the signatures, so 6 months. And that started, they launched the campaign at the end of July, so we're a couple weeks into it now. We're going to have through early next year. But like I said, we're seeing numbers coming in that are just blowing us away. People are hungry for this.
What have you seen so far? What are the numbers so far?
Well, we're not going to release those, but I mean, like I said, we have
you can't blame a guy for asking.
Out the No, of course not. You're doing your job, Steve. But we have grassroots groups across the state, and for an example, we sent a bunch of petitions out to a few groups, and within 24 hours, they're saying you didn't send enough. Send 10 times more than that. We're going through them like hotcakes. So it's there's really a fervor out there for this.
And do you have, okay, and I got a listener here, Ralph just said, how and where can I sign the petition? He just chimed in. Where does he find it? Where does he, because he's in. You know, people listening to this program believe in what you're doing. I knew they would. If somebody's here listening today, how do they find you?
Great question, Ralph. MICHCOV.com. So that's MICHCOV.com. There's a volunteer sign up there. A team captain, you can be a regional captain. We offer trainings for all the people that want to circulate. It's a top-down organization run very well, and we're making sure the people that want to help us get signatures have the right information, have the right training, and do this right, because you know the other side, like you said, Steve, is going to bring a truckload of money, and they're going to try to knock this off the ballot, and we want to make sure we've essentially what President Trump said, flood the vote. Get as many signatures.
I want to make sure I got this website right, because apparently I typed it in wrong. Michigan what? M-I-C-H what?
M-I-C-H-C-O-V.
C-O-V.
V as in Victor.
Yeah, I got it. Charlie.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'm going to pause that there, and let me come over here and share this site. That's MICHC as in Charlie, OV.com. And this is the site that he's talking about right here. MICHCOV.com. But at any rate, let me click on this Rumble link here and show you that this video does come from the Steve Gruber Show. This is the video I shared with you. I'm following his channel. I've given him a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. All right, let's jump back here and let's see what Wendy Bell has to say, because she always has some good stuff. I'm going to start this off right after she does her Pledge of Allegiance. Democrats are radioactive, and I have to agree.
Absolutely love this iteration of America right now. I love the buzz. I love the awakening. I love the crybaby nature that the people who are anti-President Trump, anti-Make America Great Again, anti-America, how they're falling apart. They want you to believe that they would rather have zombies and drug walking around the streets of D.C. They'd rather have vagrancy, homelessness, crime. They'd rather have all of that because you know what? Dang it, Donald Trump's an authoritarian. It's so interesting how Trump forces these people to hang themselves. It's like he's in the back making the ropes, right? And he's just out there handing them out. You do with what this as you see fit. And each is making a noose and hanging themselves for you to watch. So one of the biggest jokes of the last 4 years was anything about Joe Biden's cognition. The guy to begin with was already mentally dubious. This is not a rock star. He's not a varsity player, okay? This is a low IQ individual. And they put him out there as though he was actually in charge. You and I know better, and now all of the auto pen stuff is coming out in a freaking tsunami. I want you to hear James Comer. This is your chairman of the House Oversight Committee, the congressman from Kentucky. He comes out of the hallway somewhere in the bowels of the House, and he makes an announcement to the media, which is so quiet, you can hear a pin drop. And he says to the media, ladies and gentlemen of the press, who for the last 4 years wagged their fingers at me and members of House oversight in general and Republicans broadly, told us that Joe Biden was fine, that we were being ridiculous, ageist, mean even. Well, when you sit down with one of the White House spokespeople who was supposed to be his mouthpiece, Joe Biden's, and you find out after interviewing him under oath what was really going on, oh my. Here's James Comer, audio soundbite number 1, talking about the very, very small circle of people around Joe Biden towards the end of his presidency, when that flurry of thousands of pardons, all those acts of outrageous clemency were offered. Listen.
This was a huge interview today. And I think it contradicts everything that the former Biden people are saying with respect to the president's mental fitness. There were very few people that were around Joe Biden, especially at the end. And that's when the majority of the pardons and executive orders were signed with that autopen.
And he goes on, White House spokesperson Ian Sams. You guys remember this pencil neck? I do. We had his sound repeatedly, all for the last 4 years. When anybody said anything about Joe Biden that was critical, any kind of questions about his abilities, there was Ian Sams pushing back, talking about what was really going on. When there was bad information about jobs or anything related to the economy, boom, there was Ian Sams talking as though he had been sitting down with the president moments prior. Let me tell you what the commander-in-chief is saying. Until this came out in the House Oversight interrogation yesterday. Here's Representative Comer.
I want to say this one more time so everyone understands. Ian Sams, who was the White House spokesperson for a significant amount of Joe Biden's time as president, interacted with him 2 times. 2 times. So, we're going to continue to bring people in. And again, this person, Ian Sams, is the one that would counter everything Robert Hur, or anytime anyone would suggest that Joe Biden wasn't mentally fit, he would say, no, he's at the top of his game. Every time he tweeted out several times, he gave interviews on MSNBC. Every time I've interacted with the president, he was sharp. He asked great questions. In there, under oath, he interacted with the president 2 times, the entire time. The entire time he worked in the White House. That's astonishing.
It's astonishing that we had an AWOL freaking president, that they lied to you and told you that he won, that this whole cascade of garbage of corruption and filth and the obviously concerted attempt to destroy the United States never would have happened if they didn't cheat. How dare they? And James Comer continues. And in those 2 times that Ian Sams even got a chance to speak with the president, who probably didn't know who he was, well, what, pray tell, did they speak of, Congressman?
Let this sink in. Not only did Robert Hur interact longer with Joe Biden than Joe Biden's own spokesperson, I interacted more with Joe Biden than Joe Biden's spokesperson. I flew on Air Force One with Joe Biden to Kentucky when we had a tornado. I talked to him on Air Force One. Ian Sams never flew on Air Force One. Do you recall a president's spokesperson not traveling with the president?
And he had no recollection of whatever they even talked about those 2 times in 2 years. Who was telling Ian Sams what to say to the media? Who was directing his commentary? An inner circle of unelected deep state bureaucrats who hate America. That was your shadow freaking government. And Nancy Pelosi and all of the feckless hacks at the leadership of the DNC. And I'd say the RNC too went along with the ride. Finally, on Ian Sams attacking Comer whenever Comer would provide evidence of the Biden crime family syndicate. You know, the $30 million from China and Russia and Kazakhstan and Ukraine that you heard not a freaking whisper about on the mainstream media when James Comer put it out. And I shared that with you. Ian Sams was the first one to hit MSNBC and CNN and call it fake news. Under whose direction?
And then I went back and asked questions about the Biden investigation, the influence peddling investigation, because if you'll recall, he attacked me every day saying that there was no evidence and all this. I said, do you stand by that? And he never would answer the question. I said, were you surprised that Joe Biden pardoned his entire family? And he said he was surprised. I said, is that an admission of guilt? So he pardoned the spouses. The only place in the world the spouses were ever mentioned was in our final report. And he pardoned the entire family. It is his last act as president. And I think that everyone in America knows that was an admission of guilt.
So how on earth could Ian Sams, who never went on Air Force One with the president, who was the president's spokesman on the ground, while completely moronic Karine Jean-Pierre, the box-checking fiasco replacement for Jen Psaki, as she was lying to you in her moronic ways. Ian Sams was running interference on the periphery of the White House, the first to run to the cameras to deflate any kind of blowing, imploding problems. Who was telling him what to say? It wasn't Joe Biden. Who was telling him what the truth was? It wasn't Joe Biden. How could Ian Sams spend hours and hours and hours and hours and go on weekend shows lying hook, line, and sinker to the American people for 2 whole years? And President Trump is a threat to democracy. Really. We have a stacked show, guys. Do not miss a beat of it, okay? Remember, Wendy Bell Radio. That's how you get the podcast. Podcast Wendy Bell Radio, wherever you get your favorite listening materials, if you got to leave us. Because when we come up...
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this. Do you think she's got a little bit emotional there? I love it when she gets, like, pissed off. Okay, they're doing a commercial right now. It's between station breaks. So let's get back to this.
Yeah, listen, it's all about the...
Ho, 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 it's magic, you know.
Man, it's all about the smoke and mirrors. It's all about the big blowhardy candy coating. It's never about the nougat. It's never about the substance. It's never about caring about America. It's never about anything pure and honest and moral and humane. But it's wrapped in this ridiculous, garish package. So stupid. Joe Biden walking into the bushes. No, he's doing great. Everything's great. No, he's totally perfect. Yeah, I know he hasn't talked to the media in like 75 days, but no, he's perfect. He's so strong. My goodness, right? So ridiculous. How about this? Senior staff defending Biden, directing AutoPen, had remarkably little access to the president. You don't say. The people who were apparently signing his name at his directive because he knew everything, as he said, I knew everything. I approved everything. I signed everything. Joe, honest to God, really? The House Oversight Committee's probe into the former president's alleged mental decline and AutoPen authorization uncovers evidence of a silenced White House. Wait, you mean to tell us you didn't have a freaking clue what was going on? We had a bunch of imposters. We had a bunch of people pretending to do the job. That's exactly what we got. You didn't get the best and brightest. You didn't have a team of people who actually cared. You didn't have patriotic Americans who would die on a dime if it meant something positive for this country. You had a bunch of selfish jerks, corrupt jags. Bingo. 100%. So you authorized the AutoPen and used the AutoPen and you never talked to Joe freaking Biden? What? Okay, let's go there. Senior aides to Joe Biden insist that while he was president, he remained fit to govern, right? Mentally capable during the final years of his single term, but their congressional interviews. With James Comer and House Oversight to paint a picture of a siloed White House and often show key staff members had minimal interactions with the chief executive. Guys, the dude was off 580 days. He was on vacation 40% of the time. And they're like, look, it's a really strenuous job. I mean, it's stressful to be president. He didn't do a damn thing. He was drugged the same way Hillary Clinton was taking tranquilizers. Right? Guy hadn't a clue in the freaking world what they were doing. And you know what? His cracked out son, Hunter, and his completely feckless wife, Jill, allowed it to happen. That is what I would call elder abuse. Pretty sure I'd have a slam dunk case. Those closest to the former president, now 82, on a daily basis, reported he became less energetic during his final year in office. No duh, he was demented. While those responsible for the White House's public messaging continued to insist concerns about Biden's mental acuity were baseless. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a MAGA extremist. Hakeem Jeffries would stand up and wave his hands at you. Cory Booker would finger wag and filibuster you to bully you into silence. But everybody knew. Everybody knew. And who told the truth? We did. Additional witnesses have been less forthcoming about their work in the White House. Former president's personal physician, First Lady Jill Biden's chief of staff, each invoking the fifth. I wonder why ever that would be. Comer, whose committee is leading the probe into an alleged cover-up of the former president's mental decline, has vowed to continue the investigation. Guys, this ends with the unraveling of Adam Schiff. It ends with the exposure of corrupt Jamie Raskin. It puts Liz Cheney and all of her shenanigans, where she interfered in the January 6th committee by cooperating, corroborating, coaching their star witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, who says she saw Donald Trump on January 6th lunging for the steering wheel of the beast, demanding to be dropped off at the Capitol. It's also wholly ridiculous. It is beyond foolish. It is insulting to anybody with a modicum of common sense. And if you've paid any attention whatsoever to President Trump, you know exactly how he behaves. He's like a brick wall. This is blowing up in such a big and delicious fashion. Now, in case you missed it, overnight, that's just in, Donald Trump, the president of the United States, is about to ride along with DC police to witness the crime crackdown. Wait, what? You mean the 0 homicides in 7 days in America's murder capital? Yeah. He announced yesterday that the DC Park Service is getting all new sprinklers and all new sod. He says it's going to be as beautiful as Trump National or whatever his golf courses are. He said all of the beautification, says, give me 6 months. You police officers for whom he delivered pizza and burgers and then sat and ate with them. Said, thank you. I appreciate you. I see you. What happened to you, the demonizing of you, the defunding of you, and what you've been forced to go through to fill the gaps in an unwinnable situation foisted upon you by the Democrat Party. That changes today. I've got your 6. Oh, and what's that? The DC crime model might be rolled out in other cities too. No. It's a great day to be an American, ladies and gentlemen. When we come back on the Wendy Bell radio program, Gavin Newsom thinks he is above the law, and now Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice may well be getting involved in a tremendous and costly overreach of power. And this dude wants to be president. Don't miss it. Next.
All right. Okay, we're not going to miss it. I'm going to go ahead and hold us over here. Let me get this up here to about the 36-minute mark.
Beeswax. Welcome back to the Wendy Bell radio program. It's always so interesting when the left points fingers at Donald Trump and calls him an authoritarian, a fascist, a dictator, a threat to democracy. Fill in whatever ridiculous word you want to there. When all the while you have people like Gavin Newsom who are scheming behind the scenes to basically thwart the will of voters, whether it's nationally or it's focal in California. So what do you have in California? You have 40 million men, women, and children, right? And in California, you have X% of the voters there who vote Republican. Now that number, whatever that percentage is, I think it's like 40%. Let's just, for argument's sake, we'll say it's 40%. One would think if we had congressional districts that were drawn in states that accurately represented the people of said states, you would have somewhat of a mirror image in representation in Congress. So if you have 40% Republican voters, you would probably have 40% Republicans in the House of Representatives from California representing you. Well, that's not what happens. We've talked several days now in a row about the 9 states, Massachusetts being the most egregious, where a sizable group, a sizable number of Republicans vote for Republicans, and there is not one single Republican representative in Congress. I mean, it's completely stupid. It's not working. Democrats have gerrymandered their states to death and have effectively carved out the Republicans from any say in the legislature. That's not representation at all. And so now Gavin Newsom is trying to weasel his way past the 40 million voters who a majority said, you know what, there's this independent commission that's not supposed to be partisan, who we prefer and are more comfortable going out there and drawing the lines of the districts. We voted for that, 2010. We passed that. That's a deal. Gavin Newsom wants to drop $250 million that the state that is, $110 billion in debt right now? He wants to spend $250 million, just add it to the tab, right? And he wants to order this snap election, and basically without anybody knowing what's going on, nobody having the opportunity to read this legislation, he's going to blow up what the will of the people is and pass in this measure that they can gerrymander again and carve out basically 5 Republican House seats from California. We already only have like 17% representation in the state. It would whittle us down to below 10. This is what he's trying to do. It's Proposition 50. And Reform California, I want to read this to you because we're going to get you some sound. First of all, actually, let me play... I want to play this guy. His name is David Tangiba. I think that's how you pronounce his name. I'm not familiar with him. He's a California state representative. And yesterday, they tried to jam this bill across the finish line to force Californians to vote. And it's a vote, of course, that would be rigged, right? So Gavin Newsom could wave his magic wand, look like he's resisting Donald Trump, show to the Democratic Party and the wealthy donor class, George Soros dirtbags, I'm your new messiah. I'm your guy. Don't look at Pete Buttigieg. Don't look at AOC. I'm your dude. In yet another blatant power grab, Governor Gavin Newsom and Sacramento politicians are pushing Proposition 50. It's a deceptively worded ballot measure that would end fair elections in California. Carl DeMaio and Reform California have launched a no on Prop 50 campaign to stop them. It's a fraudulent scheme, he says, that uses a misleading ballot title to trick voters into giving politicians the power to gerrymander and manipulate the lines of election districts for their own benefit. We cannot let dishonest, politicians do this sort of backroom dealing that thwarts the will of the people. Well, this November, Newsom and legislative Democrats have called for a costly $250 million special election to put Prop 50 before voters. The measure is falsely titled to deceive the public into thinking it retains California's independent citizens redistricting commission. But in reality, Prop 50 does the exact opposite. It abolishes the independent commission voters approved in 2020, and it gives map drawing power back to politicians. Here is a frantic state legislator. This is a California state representative. I think he's actually I think he's a state guy, not a national guy. But he says, look, this is completely wrong. It's totally illegal. We need help. Pam Bondi, SOS.
I'm Assemblyman David Tangiba, and they just changed the law that we are supposed to vote on for the election 10 minutes ago. And they are asking all of us here in the legislative body to vote on that, and we haven't even seen the language that they changed. This is the most undemocratic process you could possibly imagine. We are voting on a law where none of us has seen the new amendment. It is a new law now. They have changed it entirely, and now they are forcing it on us and on the floor. People need to see this. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. 40 million Californians deserve more than 10 minutes of deliberation, especially when your elected leaders haven't even seen it. Please share, tell everybody what is going on in Sacramento is the most undemocratic process you could possibly imagine.
Is this the beginning of the end for California? Is this the beginning of where Californians wake the hell up and realize what is going on? You can't keep your heads in the sand. You have to get up. You've got to get out. You've got to be vocal. You have to take action. Your legislators, and that's a state assemblyman, my apologies. Your state leaders aren't able to do this without you. You must be engaged because nobody's coming in to save you. And I have a vested interest in California. It's where I'm from. My family lives there. I love California. It is a microcosm of how corruption destroys an area. It is a small example of what the Biden administration, which was executed by a small circle of unelected bureaucrats funded by dark money who hate America, how quickly they can unravel what is such a beautiful place. If passed, Proposition 50 would allow politicians to redraw districts behind closed doors, divide communities to protect partisan politicians, and wipe out transparency in the process. It is the very definition of corruption. Politicians want to go back to the days where they could carve up districts in smoke-filled rooms and guarantee themselves re-election. That is not democracy. That is a dictatorship. Meantime, in the formerly hellscaped environment of Washington, D.C., President Trump's crime crackdown. It's amazing when somebody cares and somebody shows up and somebody takes action and somebody moves. What happens?
When the National Guard hit
crime incidents were reported in Washington, D.C. in July. What will August look like? Well, let's listen to this news report from D.C. Dramatic reductions in crime since President Trump said, "I'm done. National Guard, do your thing."
When the National Guard hit the ground in Washington last week, that city's crime fight went into overdrive. And now we're seeing the impact and the dramatic reductions in crime. When the National Guard rolled into Washington last week, the locals seemed skeptical.
The crime is minimal here. There's not really a lot of crime here. It looks like window dressing to me.
But with the Guard on the ground, crime is on the decline. For the first time in a long time, D.C. has gone 7 days without a homicide. And that's not all. Carjackings are down 83%. Robberies are down 46%. Car thefts down 21%. And overall violent crime is down 22%.
When you
All right, okay, we've seen this. Great information from Wendy Bell. I held us over a few minutes for that because what she had to say, in her first 1 or 2 seconds in the beginning of this segment was great stuff. Let me know if you disagree in the comments below, and I won't share it anymore. Anyway,
because we're going to get you.
This does come from Wendy Bell Radio. I'm following the channel. I've given her a thumbs up. I hope you do the same thing for me. Okay, let's jump back here and let me remind you folks that these videos that I shared with you come directly from the producers that created them, okay? Awaken with JP, Devory Darkins, Steve Gruber, Wendy Bell Radio. I have a link to the videos that I shared with you and a link to the sites of the producer. Steve Gruber Show, if you click on this link, it's going to take you to the Steve Gruber Show. Amazing. It's like magic. So I don't get any commissions or royalties for sharing this information out. I do it so people can have a nice variety of news and information. And these videos that I shared with you are videos that I've shared on Murtech.com. Okay, there's the Devory Darkins video. Right down here's Wendy Bell video. Here's the Steve Gruber show. And I don't have time to share all 55 of them, or over 55 of them, but I do have a daily news wrap-up, and there was some interesting information came out today. You don't want to miss this. I'm going to kick this off about 9:30. I guess John Bolton's house was raided. You know, that guy that used to work for Donald Trump? And all he's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years is just bad-mouthing him. If Donald Trump blinks, he's doing it the wrong way. He's going to destroy the country by blinking that way. Yeah, you don't want to miss that. I've got over 70 videos in my playlist already, and a lot of them right here. John Bolton, home raided by FBI. This is from Anthony Brian Logan. But again, there's some news, a lot of news that dropped today. You don't want to miss it. Here's another one from ACLJ Seculo about John Bolton. Pretty interesting. Okay. This is actually, information that I want to share out with you. But before I go ahead and sign off, I do want to share one more sponsor, one more promo from Rumble on Morning Kick with Chuck Norris. So let's take a listen to that.
Hey you, there's this video. It's from Chuck Norris. It was insane. He's in his 80s and says he still feels like he's in his 50s.
It was pretty shocking. He had some pretty cool tips in there too on what he's doing,
including these 3 foods that he avoids like the plague.
He explained all the things he was doing, and it was super simple. They're so easy, and you can do them right at home.
When I first saw this, I knew I had to share this with you all.
Since what happened to Chuck could also happen for you too. But with any new method, of course your results can vary. But the video is definitely worth checking out. Watch his method now by clicking the link in chat or scanning the QR code on your screen. You won't believe how simple it is.
All right, let's get back here. And incidentally, let me go ahead and come down here, get back into this. Now, if you want the links to those, I mean, they've put the links right here. They've updated my actual description box, and the links are in here for the gocatasports.com on their Explorer float, and also for Chuck Norris. If you want to click on those links to check that out, by all means do so. Let me copy in the live chat here before we sign off. And let me slide down here and put this in a comment because it's important that that live chat information is part of the video, because when the live stream is over, then the live chat information is part of the. Okay, I've already said that. Let me do a quick refresh here, and all right, it looks like the. Okay, I already just said that. I said that already. Okay, I've had 124 people look at this video so far. I've got 20 watching right now, and I've got 9 thumbs up. So if I get 11 of you to slide down there and give me a thumbs up, I'd really appreciate that. Okay, with that being said, I do want to thank you for your time. Hopefully, I'll get to see you again later, and may God bless.